Hello and welcome everyone to Dream Chasers Ground Zero. I'm here with Eric, DiNicola, and Nick Earls. Eric and Nick, why don't you just give the listeners a little bit of a background on what you do, a little bit about where you're from, and kind of talk about what Ground Zero was like for you.
Yeah, so we're real estate investors and developers. We're based out of Boston, Massachusetts, but we invest pretty much all along the East Coast of the United States. We've been in the business since 2015. We started our own company. Both of us have been in the industry over a decade. And yeah, that's kind of our main thing is multifamily apartment buildings. So that's kind of our main focus, both condominiums and rentals.
And one thing, we do, we started more, as Nick was saying, condominiums and rentals. Depending on the market we're in, Boston, we see condominium development is, higher profit potential. That's sort of where we focus. Whereas as we go down the East Coast, we look more at larger multifamily rentals.
Awesome. So what originally drew you both to real estate?
Well, I'm third generation in the construction industry. So growing up, my dad was a general contractor. I had no skills working with my hands, so I never thought I'd make my way into the industry. But growing up on job sites, construction sites, I kind of learned it from that side. And then getting out of college, I got my real estate license and started selling commercial real estate. And then it was just kind of a matter of putting all these things together, investing in apartment buildings. My father, growing up, saw him doing construction. And then my brother, Patrick, who's also a member of the company, in 2015, he got his construction supervisor license. We just kind of hit the ground running from there.
Perfect.
And then I'd say, for me, Nick really got me into it. We've known each other for almost 20 years at this point. And I was working in New York City in the private equity markets, did some public equity trading as well. Knew I wanted to be in finance, was good at analyzing deals, more business deals. But Nick kind of got me into real estate. I saw what he was talking about. He grew up in the industry, and I kind of made the transformation over, and we hit the ground running.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I mean, how did you kind of decide to kind of start your own thing, to kind of go off on your own and kind of start building your own brand in your own sense? Like, what was kind of going through your head at that time? Like, were you afraid? Kind of what was going through your mind at that time that you were, debating on going out on your own?
I think we probably have a similar story to a lot of people. But as Eric said, we've known each other since we were kids. We actually went to high school together. We were best friends growing up. We kind of always figured that we'd do something, not just the normal corporate 9 to 5. And when I was in college, I was kind of having a slight identity crisis because I was getting internships for those sort of corporate jobs. And I felt, well, hey, this isn't what I really want to do. I knew since I was a kid, I didn't want to do it. So I started putting my focus on getting my real estate license early on during my junior year of college. And we kind of just created this plan 5 years before we implemented it. We said, hey, we're going to save up money. Now we raise money for our projects, but back then we didn't really know what we were doing. And we thought we just had to be all of our own money. So we said, hey, let's just save up our money for the next couple of years. Try to save up as much as we can and keep looking at the real estate market. And we knew development was good. Boston's where we grew up. And it's been kind of a good, solid 10 years now of a population boom within Boston, the city, and kind of the surrounding satellite cities. So there was a good opportunity there. I had the construction background, which in subsequent years I've kind of figured is not as important as I thought it was. So if anyone's listening, to this and they don't have a background in construction, they want to get involved with real estate investing or development, I just want to point out that that's absolutely not a prerequisite. You don't have to be involved with construction. What that did at the time, it kind of gave me a little bit of confidence that, hey, this is what we want to do. Let's just kind of dive in. And literally, I was saving up money for a couple of years, 3 or 4 years, and Eric was as well. before we actually were able to pull the trigger on our first project. So it's kind of a long, slow moving process, and a plan that we had for quite some time. Took a while to implement it, but we stuck to it, and eventually we were able to find the opportunity.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, everything he said there is pretty spot on. I'd say I sort of shared the same mindset as him. After college, got my first job in New York City, and within 5 minutes of sitting at the desk, I said, I don't think this is gonna work. And like Nick said, we sort of always had that plan, but in the moment, you're trying to do something, you're trying to start a career. So that's immediately, we connected again and said, all right, let's put our heads, let's get down to the grindstone here and make this happen. How do we do this? And that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this, one of the questions that comes to mind for me is just kind of, once you decided you wanted to make that happen, sort of like, what books and information did you turn to start learning how to do those things?
Well, I'd say, of course, like anyone, you start looking, up resources on the internet. You say, okay, who's done this before? What have they done? You try to get involved with websites like Bigger Pockets. That's a real estate specific, community. There's forum on there. You might have heard of it before. There's a lot of people with their experience from, a single family rental all the way up to, multiple 100-unit buildings. Books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, Napoleon Hill, things like that really get you in the mindset of being an entrepreneur and starting a business and seeing it from different angles, learning how other people have dealt with things. But I'd say if you want to point to one resource early on, the Bigger Pockets is probably a pretty big one, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the Bigger Pockets has kind of exploded in popularity, but I was on there like 10 years ago when I think it was still pretty popular at the time, but nowhere near where it was today. And that kind of set us down the path. It's always been a matter of emulating people who are where you want to be and just are, ahead of where you are right now. And I think that's very important for people to realize if they want to be entrepreneurs or if they want to just achieve success in general, that don't try to recreate the wheel. Just look at people who are doing the thing you want to do. Once you get, onto your journey, you can start innovating here and there, but it's good to stand on the shoulders of giants, as the phrase goes, because people have kind of already done a lot of the heavy lifting of figuring out how to accomplish things before you. So for us, it's always been modeling after people we meet in construction or in investing in the different markets we invest in. We'll kind of pick their brain, ask them questions, or just observe them kind of silently, not in a creepy way, but just trying to learn from them.
And I'd say, to piggyback on what Nick said, that's a key component of what we've done. Once we kind of, we knew that from the start. We're both kind of very strong-headed people. We want to try to, okay, we know what we're doing. We've learned this quick, but the key is really, okay, look, someone else has already done this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, as Nick said. And really, once we wrapped our heads around that helped our business really take off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great point, and I know that's one of the things that I've heard repeatedly in sort of just my kind of experience in the space so far, which is not much, by the way. But still, this it kind of comes back to that kind of, if you don't mind touching on it, like, who were some of those people that you were paying attention to at that time?
So there's one guy who's a big guy now in Bigger Pockets, but I think back then he wasn't. His name's Brandon Turner. I've never actually gotten a chance to speak with him, but he was a big influence on me, and now he's kind of blown up in popularity since back then. But I stumbled across a book he had written, an ebook, just about the simple concept of investing in real estate and how if you just keep buying enough properties, you can eventually replace your active income with passive income, which has kind of been the foundational idea behind our business. We're trying to get to a point where we've acquired enough properties that were bringing in a lot of cash flow for both ourselves and our investors. And we don't have to kind of scramble around. We're just kind of managing what we've got. We've got a good system of deals coming in. So his book was really helpful, just kind of in specific nuts and bolts sort of a way, of telling you how to get started in real estate. And I think our own website now, winterspringcapital.com, I've kind of taken the benefit I got from him back then. I've kind of tried to pay it forward, and literally everything that confused me over the course of my career or took me like a long time to figure out, I've written an article, or Eric's written an article, or we've kind of written an ebook about that, just to kind of get the same thing that we got. There's resources out there of people who are a few steps ahead of you. We're trying to give back and do the same thing now, that we're a couple steps ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that even just over this past weekend, I kind of had a small lesson with that. I think I was just surfing some videos on YouTube and just kind of listening to, some other people's experiences. And they had one, I don't remember which video in particular, but one person had come on and said, don't compare the chapter that you're in to the chapter that someone else is in. So like, for example, like don't compare myself being in chapter 1 through 5 to a guru that you see on the internet that's in chapter 25 or 30. Your journey is different from their journey. And just the fact that you're a few steps ahead of someone else, you have the ability to help someone else. So in a sense, you don't have to be some highly elevated mind thought leader in the space just to help someone below you and help someone get started. So, personally, that's, aligned with me, obviously, because that's what I'm trying to do right now. I know I'm not far ahead of anybody, but I'm also just trying to spread awareness and knowledge about the concept to more young people so we can try to get started sooner, building wealth and trying to be financially secure sooner rather than later.
And it could be more relatable to be getting advice from someone who's like on the first mile of the journey versus someone who's 50 miles in.
Absolutely. And I think too, one thing for us, and this could apply to, any industry, Aaron, any entrepreneur can learn like this. Nick mentioned obviously the ebook and some bigger players in the industry, especially now they've grown a lot, but even early on, just anyone we saw in our space who was doing something that we wanted to do, say we're trying to build, a 5 to 10 unit building early on. We would just look, around Boston where we started. Okay, who's developed these? What did they do? And when we had the chance to meet with them on site, walk through their projects, we would take advantage of that. Even down to the sort of last stage of project development, where you see an agent, a real estate agent. How did they market the units that this development, would house in the end? How did they find buyers? Every aspect we could take from different members of a development job as the example. Again, you can apply this to any industry. We would try to take lessons from them.
I think jumping off of what Eric just said, it's important to speak with people in real life. I was always looking for a manual, and there are manuals, and we're trying to write manuals, as I said, to kind of pay it forward. But a lot of stuff is just not transparent, especially in the real estate industry. The only way you're going to learn things is by speaking to people. They didn't write it down anywhere. They didn't codify it. And people have different perspectives, and different perspectives can work. Different styles can work. There's no centralized school of thought in real estate, which is probably the same for many industries. So you can't be afraid of basically just asking questions of people. You want to be likable, obviously. You don't want people to be annoyed by you, but you'll be surprised that people love to teach and give their opinions because it makes them feel good too. So that's one thing. Ask a lot of questions of people who you see doing big things in your space.
And I can't tell you how many times Nick and I have had the conversation where we say, okay, we figured out how to start at point A. We know what the result is. Maybe we get to point B, C, but, point D in there, how do we get over that? And he just, like he just said, maybe it wasn't codified, maybe it wasn't written down in a manual, but we figured out how to close that gap, whatever it was, whatever strategy we were trying to implement. by asking someone, by figuring out someone who had done it and just saying, okay, how did you get from here to here? Because that's kind of where we have a knowledge gap right now. So many times we've had that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I know personally, I definitely related with a lot of what both of you two just said, because when I was first getting started, like Adam, my mentor, helped me kind of connect with a lot of different people to pick their brains and kind of just ask them general questions to kind of build a small understanding for myself, which was honestly one of the things that I think important now, was kind of empowering me to go do it myself rather than just kind of, backwarding information. But at the same time, I will tell you, I was surprised at how welcoming everyone was and how much people do want to help you and people do want to teach you. Because, that's one of the things that I've tried to kind of envelop this whole concept in, is that everybody can pretty much relate to that point where they were getting started. And just about, there are some people who, are just too busy, and there are some people who don't want to help. But I have not been told no one time to setting up a call with someone just to ask them some questions. And one of the biggest things is just ask for advice. Don't come in asking, extremely questions about I want an internship or I want to work for you. Don't come on strong like that. Just come on and say, listen, tell them exactly where you're at. Be transparent and say, I'm just interested. I want to learn what I can. What can you offer me at my point in time that can best help me move forward?
Absolutely. And even people are busy. Like, I've had people call me with questions like that. And it's been a full packed day, and I'll somehow find 5 minutes because, like I said, people like to help. It makes them feel good about themselves when they help other people. And it almost makes you feel accomplished when you're providing advice to someone. So don't be shy about asking for questions. That's what I would say to anyone in any industry, because you'll find, as Aaron just said, people want to help, and they're going to be pretty gracious about it most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of the questions that came to my mind is just kind of, obviously, if you both don't mind, but would you kind of mind walking us through that initial journey of kind of getting your first deal? What was that kind of like for both of you guys?
Yeah, you want me to take that? So basically, I had been watching for projects for 2 years, and I was in kind of a state of analysis paralysis. Mm-hmm. I knew what to do, and I had saved up a decent chunk of money because, as I said, back then we didn't know you could raise money for real estate. We're complete newbies, and we thought we had to, save up all our own money. But anyways, I had saved up enough money, or so I thought, for a project. And you'd see projects come in, but there's still kind of that element of fear of kind of jumping into the deep end. And it just kind of got to the point where, I was 25 years old, and I felt like, it's now or never. I gotta get started. And a good deal just came across my desk. And we just kind of dived in from there. It was 2015. It was a small project in East Boston, but taking that first step, it wasn't a momentous project or anything, but it was a good project, and it just kind of got us started, and everything's kind of gone from there. But absolutely, when you're jumping in, when you're going from zero to something, nothing to something, it's intimidating. And your brain kind of tries to look for excuses of, oh, I need to research this more. I still don't know enough. But the truth is, one of the skills I've found that's, most applicable to being an entrepreneur is the ability to have things you don't know anything about come your way, and then you just take it and say, all right, I'm going to figure this out, because that's what you have to do pretty much every day, every week. Being an entrepreneur, you're always looking and figuring out new problems. So I would tell people to just dive in. Don't be irresponsible about it. But eventually one day I just said, let's just dive in. And we did. And it took us to where we are today. So you just got to make some forward movement.
And one thing, Nick is great at, and he's taught me since that first, initial deal, is there's data out there. Just trust in it, especially real estate data. There's so much data. There's so many, sales. There's so many comps. You could see, okay, look, we're going to buy the property for this price. This is how much it will cost to construct based on data we can find. And this is what we could sell the units for based on data that's right in front of us many times over. What's the problem? You know, and like he said, there's you kind of just have to jump in, but it's also, you know, an educated jump in. You have data there that you know, I remember at first being a little apprehensive, saying, all right, well, this is a huge risk if this doesn't work. But, you know, Nick was, like I said, he analyzed the deal. He even said a little analysis paralysis mode. He had got in for a while, but we saw the numbers in front of us, and we knew unless we somehow did something catastrophically wrong, this was going to work. And fortunately, we didn't do anything catastrophically wrong.
Yeah, it's a combination of being able to do your homework, but not getting paralyzed by analysis paralysis. So don't be irresponsible. Don't dive in with no information, but also like know when you figured it out, like you have the facts in front of you, you have enough facts to move forward, and then just do it. Don't give yourself excuses to procrastinate, basically.
You really can apply that to any industry. You really can.
Yeah, I definitely think a lot can be said for the entrepreneurial trait of commit and then figure it out. You know, as soon as you kind of take that first step and dive in, your snowball started. You know, your momentum will kind of carry you the rest of the way. You just have to take that initial step. And really, that's what it was for me. That's what it was for just about everybody I've talked to. You know, it's just, you know, I really can't say enough for that, because, you know, it really is just taking that first step, and then things will start happening for you. So, yeah, so let's change kind of gears a little bit. What was kind of, did you guys hit any roadblocks, or like what was a way that maybe you would have quote unquote failed kind of along the way that you had to kind of learn on your feet and, you know, bounce back from?
The big thing for us has been politics with our development projects. And this has been a process of just kind of getting knocked down and getting back up again, you know, however many times you have to. But we've had many jobs where politics especially can lead to some huge roadblocks, and we're thinking like, what are we going to do tomorrow? What are we going to do next week? We had a project where basically the city didn't want us to develop a project that we were doing, and they changed the zoning regulations for the single street that we were on. And technically, that's called spot zoning. It's illegal, but we would have had to sue the city and get tied up in courts for potentially years to actually get that ruling. So we kind of were at their mercy. And it's very easy when you're in that situation to just say, I give up. But we didn't really do that. We felt like we didn't have an option. We had to keep moving ahead. And you'll figure out that even problems that seem like they're insurmountable, you just keep chipping away at them. Like we met with the politicians. We brought in a really good zoning attorney who we've worked with ever since, who had political connections in the city. We had to keep meeting with them, and it's a slow process and it was painful, but we just kept going. We felt like we couldn't afford to lose, and eventually we came out on the other side with a project. It was reduced in size, but it was still a good, profitable project. And that kind of ties into what I was saying before of you can't have the manual to every problem. There's going to be problems like that come, and when they hit you, you're going to think, wow, I'm done. There's nothing I can do about this. But you got to just keep moving forward. You got to, not in a desperate, crazy way, but just in a determined every day, like, all right, I'm not giving up. I'm going to think of who can I call today that might be able to help, who, you know. And we have a bunch of projects going on right now where we're facing similar battles, and we've just kept chipping away at them. We just had a project approved through the zoning board of appeals process. Is basically you need special permission to build certain types of buildings. We just had a project approved that took us months of going through the process to get to where we needed to be. But, you know, just don't give up, keep fighting. You're going to run into roadblocks. Like whatever you do, there's going to be roadblocks. And I think the difference between the people who become really successful entrepreneurs and the people who eventually give up is just when you hit that roadblock, you make the determination, like, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. And that's kind of what separates people, I would say.
And I think part of it too, I mean, this kind of goes back to a point we were talking about earlier, Aaron, with modeling off what you see out there. It's kind of an offshoot of that. When we hit some of these problems and we could, we could have said, give up, or there's no solution to this. What do we do? We just, look all around us and see, okay, someone else put up a building here. Someone else did this. Someone else did that. We're just as capable, maybe more capable than these people. So we can do it. And that kind of mentality and belief also played into why we were able to just, keep barreling forward and not really get down when these situations happen. Because in our industry, this development side of it, neighbors, you deal with a lot of neighbors and people who live near the buildings you're putting up. They can pose big roadblocks, and that's kind of just the start of it, depending on who they get on board. So sometimes those can seem like insurmountable problems. But we just, you see development going up all around, it's working for some people. So we said, all right, has to work for us. We'll force it to work.
And I would say, speaking of books that you had asked us, some books that are helpful, a really good book is Ray Dalio's Principles. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but he has kind of a diagram in there where his theory is, and I agree with him based on my own experience, in order to reach those higher and higher tiers, you have to fail. And then that failure pushes you to the next tier. So an example of that in our own business is we keep running into these political roadblocks with our development projects. It just kind of led us to pivoting to, hey, we're also going to start syndicating multifamily purchases where we use our investors and we're going to buy existing buildings. So that political factor is less of a risk to us. And we can buy existing buildings while still doing the development job, basically diversifying the sort of projects we're doing. And I don't think we ever would have reached that point of coming to, hey, I want to buy a 100-unit apartment building if we hadn't run into all these problems.
That's right.
We wouldn't have been pushed to this next tier. So, consider when you're facing a problem that this could be a learning experience, that if you're able to overcome it, you're going to level up, and your business or whatever you're doing is going to level up with you.
Yeah, 100%. I know, just to kind of give another example, it's like, look at someone like in sales. Like, in order to move up to that next tier, you have to realize why people are saying no. Why are people objecting your offers? And then you then take that and say, okay, how do I combat that? How do I predict what they're going to object before they object it? So then you can kind of take the power out of it. Like, it's just for another example, that's how you take those failures. Like, in order to learn those things, you're going to have to fail. You're going to have to see why people tell you no.
Absolutely.
And then you take that and use it as fuel to continue moving up the chain. I mean, like, it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of those same grounded principles, but it really is that simple. It's just be stubborn, be committed, and just keep moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel, we can go ahead and start to close this up a little bit. So just kind of in wrapping this up, if you could go back, what do you think? And if you could turn back the clock, what do you think is something you'd tell yourself in your shoes when you were getting started, like knowing what you do now?
I'd say, I'll go first, I guess, is for our specific industry, Nick said, as he just kind of went into, we sort of evolved and we were sort of forced to evolve into syndicating larger apartment deals, which is sort of more of our focus now. It'll provide us, better security going forward. We don't have to fight battles to get the buildings up. They're already up. They're already producing income. We can use our development experience to maybe upgrade those, as opposed to a typical apartment syndicator who might not have that construction experience. But if we knew that early on, I'd say, again, this is just specific to our industry, not really a principle, but we would have started buying more apartment buildings right off the bat. And as they appreciated, they would have gained value. We would have built a little more wealth in the background while all this was happening, which might have springboarded our business a bit more.
And I'll stick to something more general. I think a big thing basically is to basically the importance of self-promotion and marketing. I had no
Great point.
understanding of how important that was. Eric and I have kind of grown up, you know, we're bigger guys. We played football and stuff. We're basically nerds. We're video game nerds. So I never had any concept of self-promotion or getting your face on everything. That was very antithetical to my kind of instincts. But I've seen guys who are really good at self-promotion just rise above, you know, keep rising above, like keep climbing. And I see how important that is. And people might say, you know, my kind of cynical, you know, too cool for school view when I was younger was, well, you're promoting yourself because you're hiding something. You know, you're not as good as you have to focus on marketing yourself. So that's why you know, it's not actually your skill that matters. But that's not true at all, because how are people going to know who you are, what you've done, if no one's telling them? You know, you could be the most skilled person in the world. Like, I look at my brother, he's a really, really skilled guitarist, but he wasn't big into the self-promotion thing, and no one's ever heard his concert, you know? So that's just kind of how it works. You have to promote yourself. And you shouldn't feel shy about doing so or feel like you're doing something wrong. You're not bragging. You know, we grow up hearing about don't be arrogant, don't brag, how bad that is. But then those skills kind of help you in business. So obviously you don't want people to not like you, or, you know, you don't want to be a bad person or an arrogant person, but you got to dial back the reluctance to sing your own praises when you're getting into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I could say it any better. You know, it's just, if you have a message that you feel that you believe in, you know, share it. Why not? You know what I mean? Somewhere, somebody's going to believe what you do. Somebody feels the same way. I mean, and if you haven't found those people yet, keep looking. You know, that's where, like me, one of the biggest humps I had to overcome to start this is like, who's going to want to hear it? And then, you know, the more I talk to other people my age, the more I talk to other people, you know, like-minded to me, the more I realize, like, okay, there is kind of a base for this. And there are people that are looking for this sort of information. I just had to find those people. And that gave me more confidence to then start, because I knew someone needed to hear it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, thank you. I can't thank you guys enough for coming on today. I mean, you know, thank you for sharing your experiences and your story. There's a lot of great golden nuggets in here today. So, you know, thank you again. Do you guys have any closing thoughts or remarks?
Yeah, if anyone's looking to get into real estate, we got a lot of good information on our website, winterspringcapital.com. But also feel free to shoot us an email or anything. You know, if you want to get in touch, you want some advice, anyone who's trying to go down the same journey we're on, like I said, we want to pay it forward. We want to help people, just like we were helped when we were getting started in the industry. So,
man, if you have you have an idea and it's something you want to do it. That's really all we can say. I mean, there's a lot of roadblocks to everything. You're always going to run into it, or everyone would, you know, be super successful and have everything they want. So there's going to be challenges, but don't let those deter you. If you see something you want to do, just start doing it, and you can make it happen in any industry.
100%. And I do know that I know a few other kids around my age that are interested in getting into real estate. So I might be shelling them your way, just so they can get, you know, some great information from both of you guys. And always remember, folks, this is Dream Chasers Ground Zero, and there's nowhere to go from here but up.